Hello everyone, welcome to Monday, December the 7th, to the Global Sports Channel radio show. My name's Mark Philpott. I hope you all had a great weekend, no matter where you are in the world. And hope you're all safe and well, and that you've been doing some really fun things. Okay, let's get into the show. We've got an absolutely packed show. There's been lots of sports happening across the world in the weekend, and I wonder if you've been catching up with a lot of it. On the show today, I want to start off with cricket. Yes, cricket. New Zealand are playing the West Indies in a series at the moment in New Zealand. And first shout out here to the West Indies, because they've been awarded the, what can you say, it's the most kind of sportsmanship team of the world this year. They're the ones that have been prepared to travel to play cricket all around the world. And they're currently in New Zealand, and they've been doing this under some fairly stringent COVID-19 conditions with their travel. So hats off to the West Indian cricket team, because they're doing an amazing job keeping cricket going around the world. And maybe they probably wish they didn't go to New Zealand, because they were absolutely thrashed in the test over the weekend. And let's have a look at a couple of standout performances. First of all, Kane Williamson, the New Zealand captain Supremo they call him, and it is without a doubt, if you're a cricket lover and follower, you'll know that Kane is one of the best batsmen in the world. He's been ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the world for the last number of years, and he continues the trend. This weekend, he scored his highest ever Test century against any team, and 251 runs he scored. A magnificent innings there from Kane Williamson. The Kiwis put on a huge, massive innings, over 500 runs in the first innings, and this put a lot of pressure on the West Indies to try and save the game. They weren't good enough to do that, and standout bowling performances by Bolt and Wagner from the Kiwis made sure that they ripped through the West Indies' first innings and made them follow on and play in the second innings. So Blackwood for the West Indies got 104 in the second innings. He seems to have his all his stuff together. He's a good batsman, actually, and I like this guy. So the Kiwis ended up by winning by an innings and 134 runs over there in Hamilton in New Zealand. It's lucky the weather actually stayed good for a number of days for them to get a test match in New Zealand. It's always impacted by the weather. So there we go, a cricket result over the weekend. The New Zealand Kiwis beating the West Indian cricket team in New Zealand by an innings 134 runs, and Kane Williamson scoring 251 in the first innings. Extraordinary innings there from Kane Williamson. Okay, time to move on to sailing, and if you don't know by now, I'm getting pretty passionate about this whole Vendee Globe race that's going on around the world at the moment. And if you don't know what the Vendee Globe is, well, it's a single-handed race, meaning there's a boat with one person on it. Lots of men and women competing in this. Over 32 boats started the race. We've had a little bit of attrition. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the boats are currently have just passed, a lot of the boats have just passed the Cape of Good Hope at the bottom of Africa, and they're heading now across the Indian Ocean. So they've been down in the South Atlantic for the last couple of weeks. They're now moving into the Indian Ocean, and this is absolutely one of the most treacherous stretches of water there is in the world. And if you talk to any maritime expert who knows anything about sailing or boats, they say that the Indian Ocean is a very, very difficult place to go in a boat. So this has been an extraordinary race, and it keeps unfolding every day. What I do is I follow it on the Vendee Globe tracker, so it shows you where the boats are, what their boat speed is, how they've been progressing over the last 24 hours in relation to their boat speed. And there's a lot of great information on the site there that you can actually follow it. There's also some really good videos on YouTube. We've also started posting on the globalsportschannel.com page and on the YouTube channel of Global Sports Channel some of the following from the Vendee Globe. So check that out. There's some really amazing video content there. So what's happened in the race over the weekend? Well, we've seen the convergence of the first 7 or 8 boats, and this has been really interesting because of the weather systems. Now, if you don't know too much about the weather systems when it comes to the Southern Ocean, what typically happens is that the low pressure systems are constantly rolling around the bottom of the planet. So if you look at Antarctica and you come north by a few degrees, you'll see that mostly the weather systems rotating around that part of the world are actually depressions that are forming into storms. So that's why this area of the world has so many storms, And we're talking about horrendous conditions. So these sailors are currently in around about 35 knots of wind. On a good day, it may go down to 20. And therefore, there's been a lot of opportunity for boat damage and also for skipper damage as well. We've had a couple of sailors who've actually got hurt so far during the race. Nothing that's put them out of the race in terms of personal injury, but the boats are getting beaten up pretty badly. Over the weekend, we saw Alex Thompson, who was aboard Hugo Boss, one of the favourites for the race. He's arrived in Cape Town safely now, along with Sam Davies from Initiatives Cure, and also Sebastian Simon, who was on Akea Paprick. These boats have now withdrawn from the race. The damage to the boats has been too significant. But there's been a real great human interest story come out of this, and I was watching a video yesterday from Sam Davies when she arrived in Cape Town, and she's decided that she's going to get her boat repaired, which automatically disqualifies her for the race. So you're not allowed any outside assistance when you do this race. You've got to do it simultaneously by yourself, and if you do have any damage, if you repair it by yourself, that's okay, you can continue. But if you don't or you can't repair it by yourself, you've got to get the boat hauled out of the water perhaps. That means you've got outside assistance, and that's against the rules of the Vendee Globe. So Sam Davies has found herself in this situation in Cape Town. She's going to pull the boat out of the water. She's going to get a team to help her repair the boat, and then she's going to carry on around the world, and she's not going to be officially competing in the race anymore. So an astounding I guess sense of competition, but also commitment to start and finish a particular journey. She's doing this with a big focus on charity as well. So Save the Children is one of her charity models that she's supporting, and Sam Davies has decided that she wants to send the message out there that she can achieve the goal that she set out to do, which was to sail around the world. So expect to see Sam Davies back in the water, and I don't know how long it's going to take to repair her boat, but I will keep you up to date here on the Global Sports Channel radio show about Sam Davies. Sebastian Simon, unfortunately, his boat is beyond repair. He could not do it himself. There's too much damage. There was a lot of ingress of water coming into the boat. Structurally, it's certainly at its weakest point, so there was no point and no way that he was going to be able to carry on in this year's Vendee Globe. So there we go. We've seen the withdrawal of Sebastian Simon, Sam Davies and Alex Thompson over the last few days, all safely now in Cape Town, which will be good news to their family and friends. And they can go about starting to plan their next course of action. Also over the weekend, we saw the transfer of Kevin Escoffier off the boat Yes We Can with John Le Cam. And if you remember last week, I told you about Kevin's boat also being smashed up, and he's actually had to jump on board through a rescue that Jean Le Cam came and got him out of the Southern Ocean. It made the news pretty much all over the world, this rescue attempt, and Kevin's been a lucky man. He's now been transferred onto a French frigate, a naval boat that was in the rough area that came and picked him up off Jean Le Cam's boat. And this means that Kevin is on his way back to the mainland and safety, and that means that Jean Le Cam can now return to full-on racing on his boat. Now, this guy is incredible, Jean Le Cam. He's 61 years old. He's let's say a grotty old yachty who's got a ton of experience in this race. He's a wily old man. He's not in one of the latest design boats, but he's really holding his own. I think he's in 6th or 7th place this morning when I checked out the latest standings in the race. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Jean Le Cam continues to do well in this race. I'm not predicting that he'll win the race, but I think that he's going to be certainly up there in the top handful of finishers in the race. And over the weekend, we actually saw the convergence of the top 7 or 8 boats in the race, which is really, really exciting. And this comes down to the weather system. So if you can imagine for a minute, a low depression system comes through. All the boats get on that depression system. They're flying along, hitting speeds of 25, 30 knots, which is just incredible in these boats. And then they fall off the back of these weather systems if they can't stay with them. So what happens is that everybody slows down. And obviously some people get to enjoy those weather systems in different ways than others. And that may just be because of their longitude and latitude positions on the course. It may be also the way they sail the boat. So a lot of these sailors are now very strategic in the way that they're looking after their boats. they know that you can't win the Vendee Globe if you don't get to the finish line. So even though some of these boats are built for extremely high speeds, they're having to nurse their boats a little bit to make sure they don't break them, because as we've already seen in this race, there's a lot of damages going on. So we're going to see some really interesting times in the next few days, because we've got some more low depressions coming in. And boy, I tell you, it's really, really nasty down there. We're talking 50 knots plus of wind, and waves around 7 or 8 meters high. So go outside your house today and have a look at the rooftop and imagine waves crashing over the top of your family home, because that's what we're talking about here in terms of the size of these waves. They're just absolutely extraordinary. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in, I've mentioned this just about in every video, and I'm going to continue to, because Jeremy Biu aboard Chirel, he was having boat damage right back in the beginning of the race. He returned to Sable Dion to get repairs, and he had to start all over again. And he was basically 5,500 nautical miles behind the leaders when he started racing again. Well, this guy is making up extraordinary time, and I've said it before in this video, I'm going to say it again. Don't count out Jeremy Bayou to do something amazing in this race aboard Chirel. Chirel is a high-tech Emoca 60 foiling boat. He's got this thing tuned like nothing else, and he's now only 200 nautical miles behind 7 boats that he's been chasing, which are at the back end of the fleet. So only 200 nautical miles. He's now 3,600 nautical miles behind the leader, so he's made up 2,000 nautical miles over the last couple of weeks. And he's doing an extraordinary job as Jeremy Biu. So I'm really keeping my eye on him, because I think he's going to be highly motivated now that he's catching these boats at the back of the fleet. Any sportsman who finds or gets a sense of competition and victory, he's going to really take that on board. And I think he's going to now propel himself through the fleet. How far he can go, I'm not too sure whether he can catch the front guys, but we've got a long way to go in this race, and anything can happen. And I think this Indian Ocean and across the Cape Horn leg of the race is going to be very, very decisive in terms of boat damage, boat handling, and boat management. So there we go. Jeremy Biu on board Chirel is doing an extraordinary job. He's only 200 nautical miles behind Sebastian Demistru, who's aboard a boat called Merci, and I'm sure that Jeremy's going to catch Sebastian in the next couple of days. So by the time we do our next update on Friday of this week, I'm sure I'm going to have news to report of Jeremy doing pretty well in that. Okay, time for some Formula One, and wow, what can I say? It's just been extraordinary this weekend with all the different sports events going on across the world. There's just been some amazing things happening. And that's what I love about sport. You know, it just throws up results and competitions that just don't go to plan. And it doesn't matter how good you are or where you're ranked in the world or how the previous competitions have been going. Everything can just go into chaos. And we saw that in the Formula One race in Bahrain last night. It was just extraordinary. And we've seen a lot of things happen in Formula One in the last week since I did the show last week. So let's talk about that. First of all, we had the horrendous crash of Romain Grosjean. And you might have seen photographs or videos of him. He's out of hospital now. He's got his hands wrapped up in bandages. He's trying to recover quickly enough so that he can compete in the last race of the season, which is in Abu Dhabi this coming weekend. Now, do I think that's a good thing? Well, if you ask his family after they saw him save his own life and jump from a certain death in the fire of his car, I'm sure they would say they don't want him racing next weekend in Abu Dhabi. But Romain Grosjean is going to try and do it. He's in discussions with his team, the Haas Racing team, at the moment to see whether or not he can actually take that seat. I don't think it's a good thing. I think he needs to sit it out, and he's doing it on emotion because he doesn't want to finish his F1 driving career without actually being on the track and crossing the finish line. I can understand that as a competitor, you want to go out on a high, and maybe being pulled out of a burning car is not the way that you want to remember your Formula One career. But the guy's lucky to be alive, and I would take that on board as being the most important aspect of this whole conversation. So that was a really interesting thing. And then the second thing that happened last week was Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, had got positive result from a COVID-19 test. So he had to sit out the race this weekend. And that all of a sudden started juggling the pack a little bit, and it made things very, very interesting. So we saw George Russell, who usually drives for the Williams team, come into the Mercedes team for the weekend, and right from the get-go, George Russell showed how good he was. And I said on the Friday show, don't be surprised if this guy does something extraordinary, and that's exactly what George Russell did over the weekend. Now, this guy has probably just experienced the extreme highs of global elite sport and the extreme lows all in the space of a weekend. That's what sport does to you, right? And it's thrown it George Russell's way this weekend. So imagine for a minute you get a call to say you're going to drive for the fastest Formula One team in the world, and you're coming from the slowest car currently in the world in Formula One. And that was the situation that George Russell was confronted with over the weekend. Now, unfortunately for George Russell, he's about 6 inches taller than Lewis Hamilton, so he had incredible difficulty getting into the Mercedes car. They didn't have time to redo the seat design. Everything from the seat belts to the actual position of his feet on the pedals, it was all a bit of a crush. So from the first time he was in the car at free practice 1, he was struggling with getting comfortable in the car. And that process lasted the whole weekend. Now, normally in a normal road car, that wouldn't be too much of a problem, we'd say, right? But in a Formula One car, when you're doing over 300 kilometers an hour and pulling G-forces around 4 or 5G, it's a major problem. So he was getting beaten up in that car over the weekend, and he did an extraordinary job because he actually qualified in 2nd position. Now, when you're in a strange car, you haven't driven it before in race condition, and you get put in the hot seat, so to speak, that's an extraordinary amount of pressure. And George Russell did an extraordinary job on Saturday in qualifying in 2nd position. Not only did he qualify in 2nd position to his teammate, he was only 2,000ths of a second behind his teammate. So extraordinary drive from George Russell. And when the race started on Sunday, he overtook Valtteri Bottas and went straight into the lead. And everybody was thinking, could the impossible be possible? Could George Russell actually win the Bahrain Grand Prix? Well, as the race unfolded, it looked like he was going to do that until very late in the race. We had chaos, we had a crash, the safety car came out, and the Mercedes team went into chaos mode. Yes, that's all I can say about Mercedes. Usually the most professional outfit on the grid. This weekend they showed their human, and they showed that they were absolutely capable of a debacle. And the unfortunate thing about this was that both George Russell and Valtteri Bottas' races were compromised. There's word out there to say that they didn't even need to come into the pit to get new tyres. They came in, they got the wrong tyres put on the car. They both went out into the wrong position on the track. George Russell ended up having a puncture, and that was the end of his race. So the guy was in the lead. It would have been a fairy tale story. I'm sure everybody listening and watching today was hoping that George Russell was going to have his first win in the Mercedes car. That was my wish, that's for sure. But because of that late safety car, we saw an incredible last few laps of the Bahrain Grand Prix this weekend. And, well, what an outcome it was, because if you didn't want George Russell to win, then you probably wanted the guy to win who did win, and that was Sergio Perez from the Racing Point team. He's a really good guy, this Mexican. He has done some great races throughout his career. He doesn't have a drive for next year, and he's been having a bit of a swan song in the last few races, but he performed extremely well. He came through almost the entire field to win this race. And this was an extraordinary race because the circuit was so short that they were taking under a minute to actually race around it. And if you watched any Formula One races over the years, you'll know that usually lap times around about a minute 20, a minute 30. And in some instances, like at Spa in Belgium, it's over 2 minutes long. Well, this racetrack was shortened and they were doing laps in less than a minute. So traffic became an issue, overtaking was an issue, and Sergio Perez did an amazing job. So this weekend we saw a very mixed up podium. We didn't see the usual podium in Formula One. We saw Sergio Perez doing an outstanding drive to win this race this weekend. Esteban Ocon for Renault came in second. And Lance Stroll from the Racing Point team came in third. So Racing Point had their best weekend ever in Formula One. A podium positions of both cars, first and third. and what an extraordinary outcome it was for that particular team. They're going to be called, what are they going to be called? Aston Martin next year. So Racing Point's becoming Aston Martin, and we know that Sebastian Vettel is going to be driving for that team. So Lewis Hamilton had to watch this whole race and the whole race weekend from the safety of his hotel room. He's got COVID-19. We're not too sure yet whether he's going to be back in time for Abu Dhabi next week. I hope he's not, because I want to see George Russell get another go in that Mercedes, and I'm sure that he can win the race in Abu Dhabi. After all, what's Lewis Hamilton got to prove? He's won the World Championship this year. Maybe they can just say to Hamilton, hey, you sit this one out. We're going to give it to George Russell. I wish that would happen. Anyway, knowing Hamilton, he'll want to be back in the car, and I'm pretty sure he will be if he tests negative for COVID during the week. So there we go. A safety car debacle at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix really threw the cat amongst the pigeons this weekend, and it was a great race in the end. Sergio Perez winning from Esteban Ocon, and third position was Lance Stroll. Now, I warned you on Friday that I was going to catch up with UK Snooker Championships, and we've got a Trump in the final. Yes, and it's not the Trump that we all know of. No, it's the world number one ranked snooker player at the moment. His name's Judd Trump, and he's playing against Neil Robertson in the final of the UK Snooker Championship. It's the first player to winning 10 frames will win this championship. And when I left my laptop to come on to the show this morning, Neil Robertson's winning 7 frames to 6 at the moment. So there we go. It's pretty close. I can't predict an outcome of that. I think Trump's going to win this one. He's pretty good, this guy. He's got a very strong staying talent. So I think he might pull it off. But it's really anybody's guess on who's going to win the UK Snooker Championships this year. I'll give you an update on Friday on who ended up winning that match today. Now, over the course of the weekend, we also heard World Athletic news. They presented the World Athletic Awards for this year, a bit of a mixed up year, and I don't tend to agree with the nominations and also the winners this year. I think there's been some outstanding performances on the track that haven't been recognised, but who am I? I'm just a guy sitting on a sailboat doing a sports show. So we've got the male winner this year was the pole vault world record holder. His name's Armand Duplantis, and he won the male World Athletic Award this year. And the female award went to the triple jumper Yulimar Rojas. She won the female world record holding triple jumper, and she won the World Athletic Awards for ladies this year. So there we go. There's 2 winners in the World Athletic Awards this year. As I say, there's probably a list of 10 or so runners that could have been in the get-go for that award, but that's the way that the World Athletics Awards have been divvied out this year. Okay, talking rugby now, and what a weekend it was in rugby as well. As I said to you at the top of the show, there was chaos all over the world in sports this weekend. Unpredictable outcomes in matches, games and competitions, and that also led over to the Rugby Union side of things. First of all, we're going to talk about the game that happened in Australia at Bankwest Stadium in Sydney between Australia and Argentina. And if you remember, this Tri-Nations series has been a nail-biter all the way through. New Zealand claimed a victory in the series by beating Argentina 38 points to 0 last weekend. But Australia and Argentina had to face off again this weekend, and they drew the last game. And boy, I checked out the odds on Friday to see what a draw was worth on the betting odds. I'm not a betting guy myself, but I was just interested to see. $34 for a draw. And guess what? Yes, these 2 teams drew again. 16 all at full time between Australia and Argentina. Let's have a little bit of a look at the game. It was an interesting game because it was played in atrocious conditions. It was raining throughout and the ball was very slippery. So it presented a couple of challenges for the teams in terms of what strategy they were going to adopt and how they were going to try and break each other down. So it was pretty interesting to watch. And once again, I'm just so impressed with this Argentinian team. I've got to say, they turn up now to thinking that they're going to win these games against the top rugby playing nations of the world, and I love that attitude. And what these guys have been through, I hope someone makes a movie about this, because this Argentinian team has been through so much just to be here to compete in these championships this year, with quarantine issues on both sides. They had to go into quarantine in Uruguay before they left South America to come over here. They got to Australia, they had to go into quarantine again. They had players coming from Europe to meet their team. So look, in terms of build-up for this series, the Argentinians had the worst possible build-up they possibly could get. And yet they've put on a display. They've finished second now in the Tri-Nations Championships this year, which is an outstanding result for them. And they've turned up each game with their heart and their soul into it. And that's what I love to see about any team that's participating in world sport. So the Argentinians went to the half-time break ahead 13 points to 6. The Australians weren't doing themselves any favours. In fact, their discipline really let them down throughout this game, and Dave Rennie, their coach, talked about it a lot after the match in terms of their individual discipline is costing them big in these matches. And when you've got sharpshooters in the opposition team who can kick over penalties from anywhere on the field, it goes without saying that you're going to put yourself under a lot of pressure. There was a couple of sin bins. Michael Hooper, the Australian captain, was sin binned in this match. There was a red card. An Australian player was sent off. And it was a difficult game. It was a game that again came under the scrutiny of the referees. And, you know, we can always talk about this, but in the end of the day, it was the same for both teams. The Australians came home with a wet sail. They performed very well in the last 10 minutes or so. They were unlucky not to take the game. And we've got to talk about Reece Hodge, the number 10, the fly half for Australia. I don't know if this has ever happened in World Rugby before, but over the last 3 weekends, he's had a kick in the final minute to win the game each time, and he's missed the kick, and he did it again in the weekend. So he had a kick from about 42 metres out. He'd been kicking well all game. He knocked over a wonderful conversion from the right touchline on one of the Australian tries, and as he stood up to take this kick, I thought, yep, he's going to nail this one, but he pushed it to the right. And for the third consecutive weekend in a row, Reece Hodge had the opportunity to win the game for the Wallabies, and he lost it. So a lot of pressure on that guy, and he's actually said in the press that it was on his mind and he felt under a lot of pressure. So that's something that the team need to get around him and help him with, because these demons, they can actually destroy people's careers when they've had these sorts of outcomes. So there we go. The Tri-Nation series is concluded for this year. The All Blacks, the New Zealand All Blacks, have won the series, finishing on 11 points. Australia and Argentina finished on the same number of points. However, Argentina had a better scoring differential against Australia, so they finished second. So well done to the Argentinians. I really want to give you a big shout out because, as I say, I hope someone makes a movie about this journey that you've been on this year as a team to get to play in this competition during COVID-19, because it's been extraordinary what you've done. Your coach and your coaching staff, which does include Michael Checker from Australia, the ex-Wallabies coach, have done an outstanding job with this team, and it needs to be recognised that now Argentina are one of the forces in World Rugby, and I can't wait for next year to see them playing in all competitions and to see them putting pressure on the top teams in the world. Well done, Argentina, Los Pumas. Now, overnight we had the final of the Autumn's Nations Cup in Europe, and the final was between England and France, being played at Twickenham. And finally, we got a crowd back in at Twickenham, even though there was only 2,000 people there. I think the stadium holds about 80,000, so she was pretty empty. But it was good to see some fans getting back in there. And I think I predicted on Friday that England were going to win this, and I just thought they'd have too much firepower for this. But halfway through the game, I was already sweating, and France really turned up. France really turned up, and they gave it to England. It was a game of waves, really. It came. There was some really good rugby played, and there was some pretty average rugby played in this match. But the good thing about what happened was we went into extra time, and England scored late to push us to extra time. So it was a bit of a lottery on who was going to win this game. And England came out on top by 22 points to 19 in a sudden death outcome for that particular match. Did they deserve it? Well, hard to say. I think they probably did. France really turned up and played a great game though, but we've seen England now being able to win games when they don't play well, and this is a big thing in rugby. And if you watch back over the years of the All Blacks dynasty, you'll see that they've always been able to win games when they've got their backs to the wall, and they haven't necessarily played their best. And I think that's a real sign of a champion team. So England pulled this one out of the bag, and they've got through 2020 unbeaten and playing very, very good rugby in the end. So I think England's going to be the benchmark. All the other big teams in the world are going to be saying, right, we need to knock off England to show that we are number one in the world, even though the South Africans still are. So let's see how that pans out next year. But England have won the Autumn Nations Cup over there at Twickenham last night, 22 points to 19 in a sudden death. Rush of blood, and that's what it was. If you watch the replay of that match, you'll see how chaotic it got in the last few minutes. Any team could have won, either team could have won, I should say. But yeah, it was an extraordinary outcome to that particular game. So there we go, coverage of rugby in this particular show, and now we're going to talk football. Yes, English Premier League, and it's time to introduce my mate David Barbash to give us a rundown on what happened in the English Premier League overnight. David, tell us what's happened over the weekend.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome, everyone, to the Global Sports Channel's Premier League review show for Week 11. I'm your host, David Barbash. Appreciate you tuning in. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger. And if you'd like to subscribe for your free membership, you can do so by going online, globalsportschannel.com. I appreciate that. Let's get into the games. Starting off on Saturday, the first game up was Burnley, the hosts, to Everton and the Toffees coming in. Both looking to gain more points and move up the table. Everton coming in 8th position, wanting to get into the top 6. And Burnley coming in 19th, looking to move up out of the bottom 3. First strike in the 2nd minute. Robbie Brady converts for Burnley from 25 yards out, leaving Jordan Pickford no chance in goal for Everton. Well-deserved lead for them. They could have added in the 40th minute. Chris Wood threw on goal. He failed to convert the chance. He should have taken it immediately. Jordan Pickford saved the day. 3 minutes into extra time right before the break, and the equaliser from Dominic Calvert-Lewin with his 12th goal of the campaign in 11 matches, which is pretty amazing. Great start to the campaign for Calvert-Lewin. It stayed 1-1. It finished the game 1-1, even though Gylfi Sigurdsson for Everton had a chance to wrap up all 3 points and missed the conversion. 1 point each, and 9th place Everton drops down to, and 18th Burnley moves up to. Manchester City were next up. They were playing host to Fulham. Scott Parker's side looking to move up in 17th. Manchester City come in 11th, but they could win the game and move up as high as 6th place. 5th minute in, Raheem Sterling for City. He converts the chance when put through on goal by Kevin De Bruyne. In the 25th minute, Kevin De Bruyne converts a penalty after Sterling is fouled in the box. It's 2-0 at the break. And thanks to Fulham's keeper, Areola, with many saves in the second half, he keeps it that way at full time. 2-0 to Manchester City. They move up into 6th place, and Fulham, they stay in 17th place. West Ham were up next. They were playing host to Manchester United, and the first half was a dominant possession for West Ham. West Ham converts the first chance that they had. I shouldn't say the first chance. They convert the goal in the 38th minute. Tomas Souček converting the assist. Beautifully done by Gerard Bowen. Pablo Fornals had a chance and hit the post a few minutes before that. And a few minutes before that, he hit the side netting. So West Ham felt probably aggrieved that they only went in 1-0 up. Ole changed it. The Man United manager changed 2 subs at the break. He put on Bruno Fernandes, taking off Antonio Martial. He took off Edison Cavani and put on Marcus Rashford. It paid dividends because in the 65th minute, Bruno Fernandes provides the assist to Paul Pogba from 25 yards out into the top corner. Absolute beaut of a shot. One of the best goals of the season. Mason Greenwood, 3 minutes later on the turn, bam! He hits an unstoppable volley into the corner, and Man U are up 2-1, and 10 minutes later they wrap up all 3 points. Marcus Rashford put through on goal by Bruno Fernandes. He makes no mistake. It ends 3-1 for the visitors and their club record 9th win away from home in a row. Manchester United move up into 5th, previously occupied by West Ham, who moved down into 7th place. The last game on Saturday was Chelsea, the hosts. Frank Lampard's side come in 3rd place. Leeds looking to move up from 12th place. Marco Bielsa's side usually have the hot hand with Patrick Bamford when he's playing away from home, and he strikes first in the 4th minute for Leeds. Leeds go up 1-0. However, set pieces, they're not very good so far this season, and also providing spotty defense, protection in defense, not following their markers. Olivier Giroud was left unmarked. The assist from Reece James. They tie it up 1 apiece in the 27th minute. And in the second half, after it's 1-1 at the break, in the 61st minute, a Mason Mount corner, up steps and jumps Kurt Zouma with a towering header, unstoppable. They go up 2-1. And then basically 2 minutes left in the game in the 93rd minute. In extra time, Christian Pulisic, one of the subs for Chelsea, he's put through on goal via Timo Werner on the break. The fast break leads to the assist, and Christian Pulisic buries it. Leeds United only 7 shots on goal compared to averaging 23.5 shots on goal per game in the previous 2 games. Chelsea dominant in the second half, 18 shots on goal. Chelsea moves up, or stays, I should say, in 3rd place. Leeds slip down into 14th place. We move on to Sunday's games, and today's games were West Brom starting at home to Crystal Palace. West Brom went behind in the 8th minute, scoring an own goal via Daryl Furlong. Unlucky goal to score. They equalised through Conor Gallagher, the loan signing from Chelsea, in the 30th minute. It was 1-1 at the break. Right before the break, 11 minutes before the break, Mateus Pereira got sent off for West Brom. Crystal Palace takes full advantage in the second half with the extra man advantage. They score 4 in the second half. Wilfried Zaha with a brace, 55th, 68th minute. And Christian Benteke off the bench scores in the 59th and 82nd minute. 12 shots on goal for Palace, 7 shots on target. 50-50, even in possession. Only 4 shots on target for West Brom. They end up losing 5-1. They are in 19th place in the bottom 2, and Crystal Palace move up into 11th place. Let's move on to the next game, and that's Sheffield United, the Blades, currently in last place, having only won 1 point and no games. They've won no games and only 1 point out of the last 11 games played, 33 points possible. So 1 point out of 33 didn't look good for the Blades going in. They put up a fight. It was 1-1 up at the break. Ayos Perez Gutierrez scoring for Leicester City, the visitors, first in the 24th minute. He was put through on a fast break. Ollie McBurney equalised 2 minutes later for Sheffield United. That was their only shot on target, Sheffield United, for the game. 8 shots on goal for Leicester City, 4 on target. The last one on target was Jamie Vardy, last minute of regulation in the second half. In the 90th minute, the sword was put to Sheffield United. They lose 2-1. Jamie Vardy and Leicester take all 3 points. They move up into 4th position. Sheffield United, 1 win in 11 games. 1 point in 11 games. No wins for the season. The worst start to a campaign in Premier League history for Sheffield United. Tottenham were next up, the 3rd game of the day, and Tottenham were playing the visitors Arsenal. Tottenham coming in, looking to rediscover their goal-scoring form. Son does that in the 13th minute. He puts Spurs up, Jose Mourinho's side, and then Harry Kane right in added time in the first half, converts for a 2-0 half-time lead. That is, believe it or not, their only shots on target in the game. That's enough, despite 69% possession for the visitors, Arsenal. They wasted chances. Lacazette, Aubameyang, not rediscovering their goal-scoring form. And they lose and slip down to 15th place. And Tottenham, at the end of the day, will go back into first place in the Premier League. Jose Mourinho's side looking really good. Another story for Mikel Arteta's side. Is Mikel Arteta the next or the first victim in the Premier League management-wise? Well, we'll have to see, but it doesn't look good for Mikel Arteta. The last game today in Sunday's games was Liverpool, a tough game. I predicted they would win, just like I predicted the win for Leicester and Tottenham and Crystal Palace. I was 100% for the games today so far going into the game. Liverpool relied on an error in the 24th minute. Connor Cody in defence for Wolves. He didn't trap the ball properly. It fell to Salah and he buried it. 1-0 at the break for Liverpool. They are 61% possession in the game. In the second half, they take advantage. 58 minute. And Wijnaldum puts them up after a fast break goal. Jordan Henderson with the assist. In the 73rd minute of the game, you had 67th minute, Matip scores and it puts the game away. It's 3-1 to Liverpool. And at the end of the game, close to the end of the game, the 78th minute, an own goal by Cabral Semedo for Wolves. And Liverpool win the game 4-0, which is tough to do against a tough Wolves side. A Wolves side that is indeed missing Raul Jimenez, their forward. Liverpool, they continue that winning streak at home, second in Premier League history, only behind the Premier League record of games won at home by Chelsea. Liverpool move up into second place, and Wolves, they slip down into 10th place. There will be one game tomorrow, and that will be Brighton at home to Southampton. And my prediction was a narrow victory for Southampton, the visitors. Remember, guys, there is no finish line. Be healthy, be kind to each other, and have a wonderful week ahead. We'll catch you on Friday when we do the Premier League preview show and a recap also of the Monday's game. Take care. We'll see you soon.
There we go. Thank you, David. That's a great wrap from this weekend's English Premier League season. So there we go, folks. That's it for Monday, December the 7th here on the Global Sports Channel radio show. We'll be back on Friday this week to preview what's going to happen in the next weekend of sport. Don't forget, we have the final Formula One race of the season happening next weekend. That's the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And we have the Vendee Globe race still going on with plenty of other sports that we're going to be checking out as well next weekend. If you haven't already, check us out on social media and connect with us there. We're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Plenty of things for you to engage with on all of those platforms. And don't forget our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and also hit the little bell button. You'll be notified then every time we drop a video. Thanks very much for supporting us here on the Global Sports Channel. My name's Mark Philpott. We'll be back again soon with you in another video. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay focused, everyone. Bye for now.